So much attention has been given to the Imperial Stormtroopers, the primary infantry unit of the Galactic Empire, but I figured today we'd take a closer look at one of their companion infantry units, the Imperial Scout Trooper, talk a little about the equipment they used and their history. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So, many of us are familiar with the Imperial Stormtrooper, the mainstay infantry unit of the Galactic Empire. They're often seen working in massive numbers and carrying out large-scale operations, but we also see other variants of the Stormtrooper and other types of Imperial troopers throughout the Galactic Civil War. And one of the ones that we actually see fairly commonly, especially during the later days, is the Imperial Scout Trooper, sometimes called the Biker Scout. I figured today we could take a look at exactly what these troopers do and what kind of equipment they carry and a little bit about their history. So, let's start with what they do. The Imperial Scout Trooper is, like the name suggests, a reconnaissance specialized infantry unit. They're intended to scout out areas looking for possible adversaries, carry out patrol routes, and stuff like that. In fact, they gained the name Biker Scouts or Biker Troopers because they would often be riding 74Z speeder bikes for reconnaissance patrols. To suit this reconnaissance role, they were given lighter armor that offered less protection but gave them far more mobility, allowing them to more easily traverse the battlefield for their reconnaissance objectives, which usually required them to move fairly quickly. On top of that, they were given advanced training that allowed them to function more effectively on their own, and a lot of them developed relatively honed sharpshooter skills, making them prime choices when the Empire needed snipers. So, the Scout Troopers would often fill the role of marksmen as well. But the gist of it is it's a reconnaissance unit specially trained to operate on their own and be fairly proficient with most types of blasters. Let's talk about their history. Scout Troopers actually date all the way back to the days of the Galactic Republic, where the Clone Army operated clone Scout Troopers. These used very similar armor, albeit they colored it a little bit differently and there were some minor design differences. But these could be seen particularly during the later days of the war, but some variants could have been seen as far back as the early half of the conflict. These were notable in a lot of battles throughout the Clone Wars, most notably the Battle of Kashyyyk during the final end of the conflict. But with the rise of the Empire, they needed a stand-in and a replacement for that unit, and unlike the Clone Troopers, which were replaced with Stormtroopers, which had whole new sets of armor and a different battle doctrine, the Scout Troopers remained relatively the same, with the only difference being replacing the specialized Clone Troopers with recruited or conscripted infantrymen from the general population. With the rise of the Empire, they filled a fairly similar role, but within a slightly different general doctrine. Where the Republic was fighting an open war against an adversary with a standing military, the Empire was a police state that needed help defending their own military operations. As such, the Scout Troopers went from more of a scouting role to more of a defensive role. Don't get me wrong, they still did a lot of scouting, but it was more like patrolling as opposed to scouting in advance of a invasion force, for example. You could see Scout Troopers protecting key Imperial installations, which is exactly where we see them when we first see them on screen during the Battle of Endor at the end of the Galactic Civil War. One of their most notable postings were places like the shield generator for the second Death Star, where they were chosen for their maneuverability and their ease of patrolling vast swaths of territory, which would be necessary if you're protecting infrastructure that's, defending your most important financial investment, the construction of a second massive battle station. Even after the end of the Galactic Civil War, they continued to serve Imperial Remnant forces all the way through to the dissolution of the last few Remnant forces and the fall of the last few warlords after the ongoing conflict with the New Republic. After that, we don't really know. It's fairly likely that the First Order had some sort of equivalent that we just never saw on screen, but we don't know for sure. All in all, the Imperial Scout Trooper fills a kind of interesting role within the Imperial Military, a military that favors numbers over everything else and is willing to throw poorly trained conscripts onto an enemy en masse to just overwhelm them with sheer, bodies. The Imperial Scout Trooper is basically the antithesis of that. The idea of a well-trained group of highly mobile scout troopers that are proficient with a variety of different weapons, making them just short of something that one might consider special forces. And the Scout Troopers are actually considered to be among some of the most elite troopers within the Stormtrooper Corps, which is separate from the Imperial Army. And if you'd like to learn about the Imperial Army, I'll leave a link up here to a video comparing the differences between the Stormtrooper Corps and the Imperial Army itself. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments, if you were Emperor Palpatine trying to decide the ratio of Stormtroopers to Scout Troopers, what would you pick? Would you opt to have a larger number of poorly trained conscripts to throw at an enemy, or would it make more sense to have a smaller military made up of more specialized and better trained infantry units? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.